The electric hum of the Tesla Model S sliced through the cold Michigan air as Ethan Blake adjusted his sunglasses and glanced at the navigation screen. The map displayed a blinking blue inching its way across Detroit's outer district, a part of the city most of his colleagues warned him to avoid. But Ethan didn't care. He had business to attend to, and nothing, certainly not a decaying neighborhood, would slow him down. His assistant's voice echoed in his head from that morning's call. "Mr. Blake, that area isn't exactly safe. We can send someone else to check the site." But Ethan waved it off. He wasn't just another CEO hiding behind tinted glass. His entire tech empire, Blake Solutions, had been built on the idea of hands-on leadership, of understanding every layer of operation, no matter how gritty. Besides, he had grown up in a neighborhood not too different from this. Not Detroit, but Cleveland, in a cramped apartment complex that reeked of mold and hopelessness. His escape had been hard-earned. And now, with a net worth soaring past $2.8 billion, no one told Ethan Blake where he could or couldn't go. He eased the Tesla down a battered stretch of road, lined with boarded-up storefronts and graffiti-stained brick walls. The remnants of what used to be thriving mom-and-pop shops now stood as hollow shells, their windows shattered, signs faded beyond recognition. A liquor store with bars on the windows leaned precariously to one side.
En abandon l'Andromaes d'or swung in the wind, creaking like a ghost's sigh. Ethan's eyes scanned the street.
A few pedestrians moved about, shoulders hunched against the chill. Most avoided eye contact. A group of teens loitered near a bus stop, hoodies pulled low, eyes sharp with suspicion. The weight of poverty pressed down on the entire street, palpable, suffocating. He exhaled slowly, fingers tightening around the steering wheel. This was why he was here. The city council had approached Blake Solutions with a proposal: purchase and redevelop this forgotten district into a state-of-the-art data center. It promised jobs, revitalization, and of course, substantial profit. Ethan saw the numbers. He saw the opportunity. What he didn't see, what he rarely allowed himself to see, was the human wreckage that came with decades of economic decline. Until now. His gaze drifted to the sidewalk ahead. That's when he saw him. A boy. Small. Maybe 8 or 9. Skinny frame swallowed by a tattered, oversized hoodie. His jeans were shredded at the knees, sneakers falling apart at the soles. But what stopped Ethan wasn't just the boy's appearance. It was what the boy was doing. The child was dragging 2 large canvas bags behind him, one in each hand. The bags bulged awkwardly, their seams straining, the contents shifting with every jerky step. His arms trembled from the effort, shoulders hunched like he carried the weight of the world. His head hung low, but Ethan could see his face, dirty, streaked with tears, jaw clenched against the cold and exhaustion.
The boy wasn't walking.
He was barely moving. He stumbled across the uneven sidewalk, the bags scraping behind him like anchors. A car honked impatiently behind Ethan, but he hardly noticed. His foot eased off the accelerator. His heartbeat quickened. What the hell is a kid doing out here, alone, like this? As the Tesla crept forward, Ethan's eyes flicked toward the pedestrians nearby. No one was paying attention to the boy.
A man smoked a cigarette on a corner.
An elderly woman shuffled past, eyes downcast. Even the teens at the bus stop didn't spare him a glance.
The boy staggered.
One of the bags tipped sideways, almost pulling him to the ground. He whimpered, a raw broken sound that twisted something deep in Ethan's chest. The car behind him honked again, longer this time.
Ethan blinked, endeavoring over the wheel.
Instinct told him to keep driving. This wasn't his business. He wasn't here to play savior. He was here for real estate, numbers, deals. But the boy collapsed to his knees. Ethan's foot slammed on the brake. The Tesla came to a halt, the soft purr of its engine fading into the background. A few pedestrians glanced over now, curious about the expensive car, not the child. The boy wiped his face with the sleeve of his hoodie, struggling to stand again, dragging the bags closer to his chest like they were lifelines. Ethan threw the car into park. For a brief moment, he hesitated, hands gripping the steering wheel. This was reckless. Foolish. His security team would have a field day scolding him for stepping into a neighborhood like this alone. But some invisible thread tugged at him, pulling him out of the car. He shoved the door open, the click of polished dress shoes on cracked asphalt echoing in the quiet street. His tailored coat flared behind him as he strode toward the boy. Hey.
Ethan called out. The boy's head snapped up, eyes wide with fear.
His hands tightened on the bags. Wait. I just want to. Before Ethan could finish, the boy scrambled to his feet and bolted, dragging the bags behind him.
Ethan cursed under his breath.
The boy's small frame weaved between piles of trash and broken concrete, the bags bouncing and snagging on debris. His legs wobbled, but desperation fueled him. Stop. I'm not going to hurt you. Ethan shouted, breaking into a sprint. It had been years since he'd run like this, since the days of chasing city buses or hustling through rough neighborhoods as a kid. But adrenaline kicked in, pushing him forward.
The boy disappeared down a side alley.
Ethan followed without thinking. The sounds of the street faded behind him. The alley was narrow, lined with dumpsters and sagging chain-link fences. The boy tripped, nearly falling, the bags dragging him down. Stop. Ethan pleaded. But the boy kept running, until his legs gave out entirely. The child crumpled to the ground near a graffiti-stained wall, curling protectively around the bags. His small body shook with exhaustion and fear. His face was smeared with dirt and tears. His breathing came in harsh, uneven gasps. Ethan slowed, approaching cautiously. Hey, easy, he said softly, hands raised in surrender. I'm not here to take anything. I swear. The boy didn't respond. His eyes darted around, wild with panic. Ethan crouched beside him, noting the trembling hands, the cracked lips, the raw redness around his eyes. Whatever this boy had been through, it wasn't just hunger or cold. It was survival.
Pure, desperate survival.
Ethan's gaze flicked to the bags. They were frayed, patched together with rope and duct tape, stuffed so full they looked ready to burst. But the boy clutched them like they were priceless treasures. Ethan's voice softened further.
What is your name, kid?
The boy hesitated, then whispered so faintly Ethan almost missed it.
Malik.
The name echoed in the empty alley, hanging heavy between them. Ethan exhaled slowly, lowering himself to sit on the cracked pavement. Okay, Malik, he said gently. I'm Ethan. And I think you and I need to have a talk. The wind howled faintly through the alley, carrying with it the distant rumble of traffic and the occasional shout from the main street. But here, between crumbling brick walls and overflowing dumpsters, the world felt small, quiet, and heavy. Ethan Blake sat on the cold, cracked pavement beside the boy, ignoring the dirt creeping onto his tailored coat. His heart was still pounding, not from the brief chase, but from the sheer rawness of what he was witnessing. Malik, the boy, sat curled in on himself, hugging the two battered canvas bags to his chest as though they were the only things tethering him to this world. His dark brown eyes were wide, wary, glistening with unshed tears. His hoodie hung off his thin frame, the fabric stained, frayed, almost threadbare in places. Ethan kept his posture relaxed, his hands resting visibly on his knees, making no sudden moves. Look, kid, Ethan started, his voice low and steady, I don't want your stuff. I don't even care what's in those bags. I saw you struggling back there. You shouldn't be out here alone. Malik's eyes flicked up, then down again, his small body trembling like a leaf caught in the wind. Ethan tried a different approach. He gestured toward the bags. Those look heavy. How far have you been carrying them? Malik hesitated, gnawing on his cracked bottom lip. For a moment, Ethan thought he wouldn't answer, but then the boy whispered, voice hoarse and fragile, since this morning. Ethan's eyebrows lifted slightly. This morning?
Kid, it's almost dark.
Malik didn't respond, just tightened his grip on the bags. Ethan ran a hand through his neatly combed hair, the chill of the alley cutting through even his expensive coat. This wasn't just a runaway sneaking off for a few hours. This boy had been hauling those bags around for hours, maybe longer. And from the look of him, this wasn't the first hard day he'd seen.
Where are you going?
Ethan asked gently. Malik's shoulders tensed, his eyes darting toward the alley entrance like he was considering bolting again. Hey, Ethan added quickly, sensing the hesitation. I'm not here to turn you in or anything. I don't like seeing kids alone out here. That's all. Malik swallowed hard, the rawness in his expression cracking through his guarded facade. His small hands loosened slightly on the bags, but he didn't let go. Nowhere, Malik finally muttered, voice barely audible.
Nowhere.
Malik nodded, curling tighter into himself. Ethan exhaled, the weight of the situation sinking in. A boy, no older than 8 or 9, dragging his belongings, whatever they were, through one of the roughest parts of Detroit, with nowhere to go and no one to care if he made it through the night.
You hungry?
Ethan offered, reaching slowly into his coat pocket and pulling out a protein bar he kept for long meetings or travel days. Malik's eyes locked onto the bar, his gaze sharp with equal parts hunger and suspicion. It's not poisoned, Ethan joked lightly, unwrapping it halfway and breaking a small piece off. He popped it into his own mouth to prove the point. See? Perfectly edible. Malik hesitated another moment, then inched forward, snatching the bar from Ethan's hand like a cornered animal accepting scraps. He devoured the bar in seconds, crumbs dusting his hoodie. Ethan waited, giving the boy space. Better? He asked after a minute. Malik didn't answer, but the tiniest nod tilted his head. Ethan considered his next words carefully. Where's your family, Malik? He asked softly. Malik's body stiffened again, his fingers twitching against the canvas of the bags. I'm not here to hurt you, Ethan repeated. I promise. I'm just trying to understand, all right? You look like you've been through hell. Malik's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. His lips pressed together until they turned white. For a second, Ethan thought the boy would shut down completely, but then Malik reached a trembling hand toward one of the bags and unzipped the top just slightly. From inside, he pulled out a small, faded photograph. Ethan leaned in, peering at the image. It showed a woman, young, maybe mid-20s, holding a baby on her hip. Her smile was soft but tinged with exhaustion, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness that somehow radiated through the photo. Behind her, a rundown apartment building loomed in the background. That's your mom. Ethan guessed quietly. Malik nodded, chin quivering. Where is she now? Ethan pressed gently, though part of him already suspected the answer. Malik's lips trembled, and for the first time, fresh tears welled in his eyes. She didn't wake up, Malik whispered, the words breaking like glass in his throat. Ethan's heart twisted painfully. When? He asked, almost afraid to know. 2 days ago, Malik choked out. I waited. But she just... His voice cracked, and he buried his face in his sleeve, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Ethan's chest constricted with an unfamiliar ache. He had seen hardship before. He had clawed his way out of poverty, endured sleepless nights, empty fridges, eviction notices. But this raw, unfiltered grief in the eyes of a child, it hit differently. Ethan sat back, staring at the photograph, at the 2 bags, at the trembling boy beside him. How long have you been out here? Ethan asked softly. Since, after Malik trailed off, unable to finish. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, weighing his options. He could walk away.
Call child service.
Let the system handle it. It was what most people would do. Hell, it was probably what his security advisors would insist on. But Ethan had seen enough of the system growing up to know it didn't always work.
Foster homes overcrowded.
Social workers overworked. Kids like Malik slipping through the cracks, becoming statistics. And maybe this time, he wasn't willing to let that happen. Okay, Malik, Ethan said after a moment, his voice steady with quiet resolve. Here's what we're going to do. You're coming with me. We'll get you cleaned up. Federal. And we'll figure this out. Malik flinched, his grip tightening on the bags again. Ethan held up his hands. I'm not taking your stuff. I promise. Whatever's in there, it stays with you. Okay? But you can't stay out here. It's freezing and you shouldn't be alone. Malik hesitated, eyes darting around, uncertainty written all over his face. Please, Ethan added softly. Let me help. For a long frozen moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, Malik nodded.
Ethan exhaled, standing and offering a hand. Comme un kid.
Malik gathered his bags, dragging them behind him as he followed Ethan back toward the waiting Tesla, the quiet hum of the city pressing in once more. Ethan Blake led the way back toward his parked Tesla, glancing over his shoulder every few steps to make sure Malik was still following. The boy trailed behind him, dragging the worn canvas bags, his thin frame hunched beneath the oversized hoodie. His eyes never stopped darting left and right, scanning every alley, doorway, and parked car, as if expecting someone to jump out at any moment. The streets were colder now, the winter sun dipping lower, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. The few pedestrians who remained glanced at Ethan and Malik as they passed, some with curiosity, some with suspicion, and a few with open hostility. It didn't help that the gleaming black Tesla Model S stood out like a neon sign in the middle of this run-down neighborhood. Its sleek design and flawless paint job looked absurd parked among rusted-out sedans and dented pickup trucks. The car attracted attention, the kind Ethan normally welcomed, but tonight, it made him uneasy. As they approached the vehicle, Ethan could already feel eyes on him. A group of men leaned against the wall of a corner store across the street, watching. One of them flicked a cigarette onto the sidewalk, his gaze lingering on Malik's bags. Ethan unlocked the car with a soft beep. Malik froze, eyeing the vehicle with wide, uncertain eyes. "It's okay," Ethan assured him. "Hop in." The boy hesitated, then slowly shuffled toward the passenger door, still clutching his bags. Ethan helped him open the door and gently lifted the bags into the back seat, careful not to pry or inspect them. He could feel Malik's eyes on him, watching every move, his small body taut with tension. Once Malik was settled in the passenger seat, Ethan walked around to the driver's side and climbed in. The car's heated interior immediately chased away the bitter chill, but neither of them relaxed. Ethan started the engine, but before he could pull away, a sharp knock on the driver's side window made him jump. A uniformed police officer stood outside, one hand resting on his belt, the other tapping the window with 2 fingers. Ethan rolled down the window halfway, his expression neutral. "Good evening, officer," he greeted calmly. The officer, tall and broad-shouldered, glanced at Ethan, then at Malik sitting rigid in the passenger seat. His eyes lingered on the canvas bags in the back seat. "We've had reports of a kid dragging bags down this street," the officer said. His name tag read Daniels. His tone was professional, but there was a thin layer of skepticism beneath it. "Mind telling me what's going on here?" Ethan kept his voice even.
"The boy's name is Malik."
He was struggling with those bags. "I stopped to help." Officer Daniels' gaze narrowed slightly. "You stopped to help?" "Just happened to be driving your luxury car through this neighborhood and decided to pick up a kid off the street." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I was here for business."
Real estate survey. I saw a child in distress.
I wasn't about to ignore him. Daniels didn't look convinced. His eyes flicked to Malik. "Son, is this man bothering you?" the officer asked. Malik shrank into his seat, clutching the edge of his hoodie, eyes wide with fear. He didn't answer. Ethan's frustration simmered beneath his calm exterior. "Look," Ethan said, "the kid's been through enough. His mother, she passed recently. He's alone. I'm trying to get him somewhere safe." Officer Daniels raised an eyebrow. "That true?" he asked Malik again.
The boy's lips parted, but no sound came out.
His eyes were glossy with unshed tears. Daniels exhaled, clearly debating his next move. "You got ID?" he asked Ethan. Ethan retrieved his wallet from the center console and handed over his driver's license and business card. Daniels inspected them, his eyes widening slightly as he recognized the name.
Ethan Blake. Blake Solutions, Daniel Smuttered.
"You're that tech guy."
The Millionaire.
Ethan gave a tight nod. "That's me." Daniel's expression shifted, but not entirely in a good way. There was a flicker of distrust. Wealth didn't buy automatic respect in these parts.
If anything, it bred resentment.
"You know," Daniel said, handing back the ID, "guys like you show up around here every few months. Talking about revitalization development. Meanwhile, families get pushed out, rents go up, and kids like him," he gestured toward Malik. "They fall through the cracks." Ethan held his gaze. "Which is exactly why I stopped. I'm not here to exploit this city. I grew up in places like this. I know what it's like." Daniels considered him for a moment, then glanced back at Malik. "All right," the officer finally said.
"I'll let you go.
"But I'm filing a report on this interaction. If I hear the kid went missing or turns up hurt," he let the threat hang in the air. Ethan nodded.
Understood."
Daniel stepped back, tapping the roof of the car. "Be careful," he warned, then turned and walked away, his heavy boots crunching on the asphalt.
Ethan rolled up the window, exhaling slowly.
Is he gone?
Malik whispered.
Yeah, Ethan confirmed. He's gone. He shifted the car into gear and pulled away from the curb, the Tesla gliding silently down the street. They drove in silence for several blocks. Malik stared out the window, his expression unreadable, the streetlights casting fleeting glows across his face. Ethan finally spoke. You okay? Malik nodded weakly. Ethan hesitated, then added, I meant what I said.
I'm taking you somewhere safe.
Where? Malik asked quietly.
Ethan's mind raced.
Technically, he wasn't sure.
A hotel?
His downtown condo? Call a lawyer first? He hadn't exactly planned for this. For now, Ethan said, a place with heat. Food.
Somewhere you can rest.
After that, we figure it out. Malik's shoulders relaxed a fraction, but his grip on his hoodie remained tight. Ethan glanced at him again, reminded of his own reflection in the rearview mirror 2 decades ago, a scrawny kid with nothing but stubbornness and a few dollars to his name. He wasn't about to let Malik become another forgotten face in the system. Not tonight. Not ever. The Tesla hummed steadily as it slipped through the faded streets of Detroit, the city's broken facade giving way to pockets of newer development as they drove farther from the forgotten neighborhoods. Neon signs flickered above rundown gas stations, and old apartment buildings stood next to sleek modern coffee shops that seemed out of place among the crumbling infrastructure. Inside the car, the air was quiet, save for the gentle whir of the engine and the occasional soft sniffle from Malik beside him. The boy pressed his forehead to the window, watching the city pass by in a blur of streetlights and shadows. His canvas bags sat in the back seat, untouched, like silent witnesses to everything he had been through. Ethan glanced at him briefly, then focused back on the road. They were heading toward a high-rise apartment complex in downtown Detroit, a property Ethan kept for business trips and occasional escapes from the constant attention his wealth brought. It wasn't home, not really, but it was safe, warm, and private. For now, it would have to do. As they passed under an overpass, Ethan finally broke the silence.
Malik.
I meant what I said earlier. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to. But I want to understand. I want to help. Malik's reflection stared back at him from the glass, wary and guarded. For a moment, Ethan thought the boy would stay silent again. But then softly, Malik spoke. My mom, she used to tell me, keep walking, he whispered, voice shaky. If you keep walking, maybe someone will help. Ethan's grip on the wheel tightened. That's why you were out there? Walking. Malik nodded. Where were you going? I don't know, away, anywhere, it didn't matter. Malik's fingers curled around the hem of his hoodie. Just, away from the apartment. Away from her. His voice cracked on the last word. Ethan's heart clenched. I'm sorry about your mom, Ethan said quietly. You said, she didn't wake up? Malik's eyes stayed fixed on the window, but he nodded. She was sick for a long time, he whispered. We didn't have money for doctors. She kept saying she was fine. But she wasn't. Ethan exhaled slowly, memories of his own childhood clawing at the edges of his mind. His mother, working double shifts at the diner, coughing through the night, never admitting how bad things were. He had been lucky that she pulled through, lucky that he got out. But not everyone was lucky.
What about your dad?
Ethan asked gently. Malik shook his head. Never met him. Mom said he left before I was born. Ethan frowned. It wasn't an unfamiliar story, especially in the neighborhoods like the one Malik came from. But it still twisted something deep inside him. So it's just been you and your mom, until... Malik's lips pressed together, his shoulders curling inward. I waited with her, after she... I waited all day, but she didn't move.
No one came. No one cared.
Ethan's jaw tightened. You shouldn't have been alone like that, he muttered. Malik shrugged, a bitter edge creeping into his small voice. Who else was gonna be there?
The neighbor?
They don't care. Everyone's got their own problems. Ethan didn't argue. He knew the truth in Malik's words. They drove the next few blocks in silence until the towering apartment building came into view. Glass windows gleamed in the city lights, and a uniformed doorman stood outside beneath a sleek awning. The building looked completely out of place compared to the neighborhoods they had just left behind. Malik's eyes widened as they approached. "This where you live?" he asked quietly. "Sometimes," Ethan replied. "It's temporary, but safe." He pulled into the private garage beneath the building, the heavy security gate rolling shut behind them. The car eased into a reserved space, and Ethan turned off the engine. Malik hesitated, his fingers twitching toward his bags. "Your stuff's safe," Ethan assured him.
You can bring it upstairs.
Malik nodded, quickly scrambling out of the car and dragging the bags with him. Inside the elevator, Malik stayed close to the wall, his eyes darting to the mirrored surfaces, the glowing floor numbers, the spotless tiles beneath his worn sneakers. The contrast between him and the sterile, polished environment was jarring. Ethan punched in the code for the penthouse floor, the elevator ascending smoothly. When the doors opened, they stepped into a spacious modern apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. The decor was minimalist, all sleek lines and neutral tones, expensive without being ostentatious. But none of that mattered now. Malik hovered near the entrance, clutching his bags, his small frame overwhelmed by the space. "You can set your stuff down anywhere," Ethan offered, tossing his keys onto a marble countertop. "There's a bathroom through there. Towels. You can clean up if you want." Malik lingered a moment longer, then slowly shuffled toward the living room, setting his bags beside the couch. Ethan retrieved bottled water from the kitchen and handed it to him. "Drink. You probably haven't had much today." Malik took the bottle with both hands, sipping cautiously at first, then gulping the rest down. Ethan sat across from him, watching quietly.
Malik.
"I need to be honest with you," Ethan began. "If we're going to figure this out, there are some things I need to know. Things that'll help me, help you." Malik's eyes flickered with hesitation. Ethan continued carefully. "Do you have any family? Anyone I should call? Grandparents? Aunt? Uncle?" Malik shook his head. "It was just Mom."
No one else.
Malik's eyes dropped to the floor. "Grandma died last year," he whispered. "Mom's brother, he's in jail."
No one else.
Ethan exhaled, the reality settling over them both like a weight. "Okay," he said softly. "Then, we figure it out ourselves." Malik looked up, uncertainty warring with hope in his expression. "But, they'll take me away," he said suddenly, panic creeping into his voice. "The cops foster care, they'll take me away, they'll throw away Mom's stuff." Ethan shook his head firmly.
Not happening, est promised.
"Your stuff stays with you.
You stay with me, for now.
Until we work this out." Malik searched his face, studying him, as if trying to detect a lie. But all he found was quiet resolve. After a long pause, Malik whispered, "Okay." Ethan nodded. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The hours drifted by quietly as night settled over Detroit. The penthouse was still, save for the distant hum of city traffic far below. Ethan Blake sat in his leather chair by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the skyline glowing behind him. His laptop sat open on the table beside him, emails and notifications piling up, unread, ignored. Across the room, Malik lay curled on the couch, wrapped in a soft blanket Ethan had pulled from the linen closet. The boy's breathing was slow, steady now, his chest rising and falling beneath the oversized hoodie. His canvas bags rested beside him, untouched by anyone but him. For the first time in what was likely days, Malik was asleep. But Ethan couldn't rest. His mind churned as he stared out at the glowing city, phone pressed to his ear. On the other end of the line, his attorney, James Crawford, sighed heavily.
Ethan, you know this is risky.
Ethan's jaw tightened. "I didn't exactly have time to consult you while a scared, grieving kid dragged his life down the street." "I'm not questioning your intentions," James replied evenly. "But the law's the law. Technically, you took custody of him without going through any formal channels. You can't just decide to be this kid's guardian." Ethan leaned forward, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I didn't decide anything. The system wasn't there. I was." There was a pause on the line, followed by a resigned sigh. "Look, I'll make some calls. Child Protective Services. See what I can do to buy you some time. But Ethan, if this gets out, The media, social services, hell, even the police, they'll come knocking. They already did, Ethan muttered, recalling Officer Daniels and his thinly veiled suspicion. James's voice grew more serious. And if Daniels files a report? If CPS gets wind of this before we're ready, they can take him, Ethan. You won't have a say. Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. Then we get ready, he said flatly.
Fast. Another pause.
All right.
Il est le dos Vatican.
Ethan ended the call, setting the phone down on the table with more force than necessary. His eyes drifted back to Malik, still sound asleep, his small frame barely denting the cushions. This wasn't how Ethan had planned to spend his evening. His calendar had been filled with investor meetings, expansion strategies, contract reviews. Not this. And yet, none of it felt as important as the boy sleeping on his couch. He stood quietly, crossing the room, careful not to wake Malik as he crouched beside the bags. For a moment, his hand hovered over the worn fabric, but he didn't open them. He had promised not to touch the boy's belongings. And despite everything, Ethan wasn't about to break that promise. Still, he wondered. What was inside?
Piece of Malik's shattered life?
Memories? Trash others would overlook but meant everything to him? Ethan straightened, returning to his chair. His thoughts drifted to Officer Daniels again, the look in the man's eyes. Suspicion certainly, but something else too. A warning. Resentment.
Ethan knew the type.
Men like Daniels spent their careers watching neighborhoods like Malik's fall apart. They saw people like Ethan, rich, powerful, confident, sweep in with promises of revitalization, only to leave communities gutted, families displaced. And now, Ethan had swept in again. But this time, it wasn't property he'd taken. It was a child. No wonder the officer had been cautious. Ethan's phone buzzed on the table, snapping him from his thoughts. A text from James. CPS already logged a missing child report for a Malik Carter. They'll be looking for him. You need to tread carefully. Ethan stared at the screen, his stomach twisting. He glanced at Malik, still asleep, oblivious to the storm gathering around him. Ethan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. The smart play was simple: call CPS. Explain the situation. Let the system do its job. But when had the system ever done its job for kids like Malik? Ethan had seen it firsthand. Foster homes overflowing, caseworkers overwhelmed, kids shuffled between strangers' houses like unwanted baggage. He'd known boys like Malik. Hell, he could have been Malik if his own mother hadn't fought tooth and nail to keep him. The system wasn't built for kids like Malik. It was built to survive them. Ethan rubbed his temples. He needed a plan.
Fast.
In the silence, Malik stirred, groaning softly as his eyes blinked open. Ethan stood, approaching cautiously. Hey, he said gently. You okay? Malik sat up, rubbing his eyes. His gaze darted around the room, landing on his bags. Relief flickered across his face when he saw they were untouched. Yeah, Malik mumbled, voice raspy from sleep.
You hungry?
Ethan asked. Malik nodded shyly. Ethan smiled faintly. Let's fix that. He ordered room service, a perk of staying in a luxury building, even at this hour. Within 30 minutes, a cart arrived laden with grilled cheese sandwiches, tomato soup, fruit, and chocolate milk. Malik ate like he hadn't seen food in days. Which, Ethan realized grimly, was probably true. As the boy devoured his sandwich, Ethan sat across from him, watching. After a few bites, Malik paused, glancing up warily. You're not gonna call them, are you? He asked softly. Ethan hesitated. Call who?
The people who take it away, Malik whispered, eyes shining with fear.
They always do. They take you, and you never see your stuff again. Ethan's throat tightened.
Malik.
I'm trying to help you. But
he can't lie to you. The police know he found you.
They'll tell Child Protective Services. It's their job.
Malik's expression crumpled, panic rising.
Ethan quickly added, but listen to me.
I'm not handing you over to strangers.
I'm not letting them throw away your stuff. I'm figuring this out. But you have to trust me. Malik stared at him, eyes wide, vulnerable, weighing the words. Finally, he whispered, You promise. Ethan nodded firmly. I promise. It wasn't a solution, but it was a start. And Ethan Blake never broke his promises. The morning sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden rays across the sleek apartment. The quiet hum of the city had replaced the silence of the night, but inside Ethan Blake's penthouse, the air remained heavy with uncertainty. Malik sat cross-legged on the couch, his small frame hunched over his canvas bags, fingers running along the worn fabric as if reassuring himself that they were still there. His hoodie swallowed him whole, the sleeves trailing past his wrists. Ethan stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, tension etched into every line of his posture.
On the other end of the call, James Crawford's voice cut through the static.
Ethan, I've been pulling strings all night, James reported. But you need to be ready. CPS is already processing the report. If they show up, they have legal authority to take the kid. Ethan's jaw tightened. We're not there yet. Maybe not, James agreed, but it's coming. Ethan ended the call and turned back toward Malik, who was watching him now, cautious, guarded. They're coming, aren't they? Malik asked quietly.
Ethan exhaled slowly.
Maybe. Malik's eyes dropped to his lap. His fingers clenched around the straps of his bags. Hey, Ethan said, crossing the room and crouching in front of him. I told you I wouldn't let them take your stuff. I meant that. Malik nodded, but his expression was clouded with fear. Ethan hesitated, then asked, What's in the bags, Malik? You don't have to show me, but maybe if I understand, I can help.
For a moment, Malik said nothing.
Then slowly, he unzipped the larger bag and pulled out its contents. It wasn't much. A few pieces of worn clothing.
A faded teddy bear missing one eye.
A cracked plastic cup with mommy scrawled on the side in childish marker. A folded blanket. And tucked carefully between them all, a photo frame wrapped in a threadbare scarf. Malik placed the frame on the table, unwrapping it gently. Inside was a picture of him and his mother. She looked tired, but her smile was genuine, her arm wrapped protectively around Malik's small shoulders. Ethan's chest tightened. This is all I have left, Malik whispered, voice trembling. If they take me, they'll take this too. Ethan swallowed hard. They won't, he promised. Malik hesitated, then carefully repacked the bag, zipping it closed with shaky hands. Ethan stood, pacing the room. He'd grown up with nothing but his mother's determination and a stubborn refusal to accept that the world was stacked against him. It had fueled him, driven him to build his empire, to escape poverty. But standing here now, with Malik clinging to the only fragments of his life, Ethan realized money didn't erase the cracks in the system. If anything, it highlighted them.
A knock at the door shattered the tension.
Ethan's head snapped toward the entrance. Malik froze. Stay here, Ethan instructed, striding toward the door. Through the peephole, he saw Officer Daniels, flanked by a woman in business attire holding a clipboard. Child Protective Services. Ethan opened the door cautiously. Morning, Daniels greeted, his expression unreadable. This is Ms. Ramirez from CPS, he added, gesturing to the woman. Ethan nodded stiffly. I figured this was coming.
MS. Ramirez stepped forward.
She was composed, professional, her expression practiced empathy. We received a report about a missing child, she began.
Malik Carter.
We've been trying to locate him. He's here, Ethan confirmed. May we come in? Ethan hesitated, then stepped aside. Malik sat stiffly on the couch, his bags clutched to his chest. His eyes darted between Daniels and Ms. Ramirez, panic rising. It's okay, Malik, Ethan said quickly.
Just, let me handle this. MS. Ramirez crouched, adopting a gentle tone.
Hi Malik, I'm here to make sure you're safe. Malik said nothing, shrinking into the couch. Ethan crossed his arms. He's safe. I made sure of that. Ms. Ramirez straightened. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Blake, but custody laws are clear. He can't stay here without going through proper channels. Ethan's voice sharpened. The system failed him. He was on the street, alone, after his mother died. Where were those proper channels then? Daniels shifted uncomfortably but remained silent. Ms. Ramirez remained composed.
I understand your frustration.
But I have protocols to follow. If Malik has no immediate family. He doesn't, Ethan interrupted. Then he'll be placed with a temporary foster family while we assess long-term options. Malik's face crumpled, his grip tightening on his bags. Ethan's pulse pounded. He had seen the inside of those temporary homes.
Overcrowded.
Underfunded. Cold. He wouldn't let Malik disappear into that system. I can apply for guardianship, Ethan argued. I have resources. Stability. That takes time, Ms. Ramirez replied. Meanwhile, Malik can't stay here. Daniels finally spoke. He's right, you know. You can't buy your way around this.
Ethan's eyes flashed.
I'm not trying to buy anything. I'm trying to do what your system clearly couldn't.
The room tensed. Malik's breeding quickened.
Ms. Ramirez softened her tone. Mr. Blake.
I believe you mean well.
But we have rules for a reason. Ethan clenched his jaw.
Malik whispered, barely audible, don't let them take me.
Ethan crouched beside him, his voice steady but low.
I'm not giving up on you.
Ms. Ramirez waited, watching them both. Finally, Ethan stood, facing her. Let's compromise, he offered.
You want stability?
Let me provide it. Supervised. Legally. Malik stays with me under emergency placement while we file guardianship paperwork. Ms. Ramirez considered him carefully. It's not typical, she admitted. But I've seen worse options. Daniels looked skeptical but stayed silent. Fine, Ms. Ramirez agreed.
Temporary emergency placement.
But I'll be checking in. Ethan nodded. Good.
Malik exhalait shakily, relief flooding his face.
The system wasn't perfect. But for once, Ethan had found a crack wide enough to protect someone who needed it most. The CPS visit left the apartment in an uncomfortable silence. After Ms. Ramirez and Officer Daniels left, Ethan stood by the window, staring out over the Detroit skyline, watching as the city pulsed with life beneath him. But his mind wasn't on business meetings or real estate anymore. It was on Malik. The boy sat at the kitchen counter, nursing a glass of chocolate milk, his canvas bags never more than an arm's reach away. His eyes, wide and cautious, followed Ethan's every move. Ethan turned from the window. They'll be back, Malik said quietly. They will, Ethan admitted. But not to take you. At least, not yet. Malik said nothing, but the doubt lingered in his eyes. Ethan's phone buzzed.
Another call from James Crawford.
He answered, stepping into the hallway for privacy. James. I heard, James said immediately. CPS agreed to temporary emergency placement. Yeah, Ethan confirmed, watching Malik through the glass wall that separated the hallway from the living room. But it's a band-aid. They could change their mind any time.
James sighed. It buy US time.
I've already started guardianship paperwork, but Ethan, you need to prepare. This will not be quiet.
Ethan's eyes narrowed.
What do you mean? There's media chatter already, James explained.
Social media caught wind of this. Someone saw you with the kid yesterday.
The whole billionaire rescues homeless boy angle? It's trending. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, jaw tightening. Perfect, he muttered.
That's all I need.
It's a double-edged sword, James warned. The public attention could help, or backfire. How? People love a savior story, James replied. But they also love tearing down billionaires. Some will say you're using Malik for publicity. Others will claim you're exploiting him. Ethan exhaled through his nose. And CPS? They hate high-profile cases, James said.
It complicates everything.
Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, tension coiling through him.
Tell me what you need to do.
Lay low, James advised. No press conferences.
No interview. Focus on Malik.
And prepare for a fight. Ethan ended the call, sliding the phone into his pocket. When he returned to the living room, Malik was still at the counter, his small hands cupped around the glass of milk. People, they already know? Malik asked softly, as if reading Ethan's thoughts. Some do, Ethan confirmed. But don't worry. I'll handle them.
Malik hesitated.
Why are they mad? You didn't do anything wrong.
Ethan's mouth twisted into a humorless smile.
Sometimes, people don't need a good reason to be angry, kid. Malik nodded as if he understood more than he should. Later that day, the reality of James's warning became clear. News vans parked across the street. Paparazzi lingered by the building entrance. Online articles flooded in, each headline more sensational than the last. Tech mogul Ethan Blake rescues homeless boy, heartwarming or PR stunt? Billionaire's sudden guardianship raises questions about system exploitation.
Detroit's forgotten children, où est-ce responsible? Ethan scrolled through the headline, frustration simmering.
In the background, the TV played news coverage of the story. A well-dressed anchor smiled at the camera. Mr. Blake has been granted temporary placement of Malik Carter, an 8-year-old boy whose mother passed away recently. While some hail Blake as a hero, others question the legality and the motive behind his actions. Ethan muted the TV and tossed the remote onto the couch. He turned to find Malik watching him from the hallway, a worried frown creasing his small face. They think you're lying, Malik stated quietly. They always do, Ethan replied. A knock at the door made them both flinch. Ethan approached cautiously, checking the peephole. It wasn't the police or CPS this time. It was a reporter. Female, mid-30s, holding a microphone, a cameraman behind her. Ethan didn't open the door. From behind the safety of the door, the reporter called out. Mr. Blake, do you care to comment? Why take in this boy now? Is this a publicity stunt? Are you using him to distract from your controversial real estate projects? Ethan's fists clenched at his sides.
The cameraman panned toward the windows, filming the penthouse exterior.
Mr. Blake? No comment? The public deserves transparency.
Ethan backed away from the door.
Stay away from the windows, he instructed Malik firmly. The boy obeyed, retreating to the center of the apartment. Ethan grabbed his phone, dialing James again. We have reporters on the doorstep now, Ethan said when James picked up. Of course we do, James muttered. They smell blood. I'll send a statement through legal channels. But they won't back off. Ethan's jaw clenched. Then what? Then you fight, James replied simply. You show them you're not backing down. And you keep that kid safe. The call ended. Ethan lowered the blinds, blocking the outside world. For now, the apartment was a fortress. But it wouldn't hold forever. That night, Ethan sat with Malik at the dinner table. The boy picked at his food, quiet, withdrawn.
Ethan broke the silence. You holding up okay? Malik shrugged.
I guess. You know, this isn't normal for me either, Ethan admitted.
Malik glanced up, curious.
You mean, the cameras? The reporters?
Ethan chuckled humorlessly.
No. I mean, taking care of someone. It's been a long time since I had to worry about anyone but myself. Malik considered that. Were you alone too? He asked. Ethan nodded. For a while. Malik's expression softened, understanding passing between them. They finished dinner in quiet solidarity. Later, when Malik finally drifted to sleep on the couch, Ethan stood by the window once more, staring at the city. Below, the reporters lingered. Above, CPS bureaucracy waited. In the middle stood Ethan, no longer just a billionaire, but a man caught in a system broken beyond belief. And this time, walking away wasn't an option. The following morning, Ethan woke early, though he had barely slept. His mind had been a battlefield of legal concerns, media chaos, and the overwhelming responsibility that had suddenly fallen on his shoulders. But when the soft rays of dawn crept through the curtains, he was already dressed and making calls. Malik, still asleep on the couch, looked smaller than ever, curled beneath the blanket, his canvas bags close by like trusted sentinels. By the time Ethan poured his first cup of coffee, James Crawford was on the line. We need to talk, James said without greeting. Good morning to you too, Ethan replied flatly. Listen, James continued, his voice more serious than usual. The situation with CPS is stable for now, but I did some digging. If you really want permanent guardianship, we need to address Malik's past officially. Ethan's brow furrowed. Meaning, his mother's death wasn't documented properly. No medical examiner.
Nos police report.
Nobody checked on them. Legally, she's still a missing person.
Ethan Kirstender is Brice.
James added, we need to go there. To the apartment.
Confirm everything.
Get the city involved, file the paperwork. It's the only way to solidify your position. Ethan's jaw clenched. He had been dreading this moment, but there was no alternative. Fine, Ethan said. We'll go today. Hours later, Ethan found himself driving toward the neighborhood Malik had left behind, the place he had tried so desperately to escape. The contrast between the luxury of Ethan's penthouse and the crumbling apartment complex was impossible to ignore. The building stood like a relic of better days, its faded bricks cracked and worn, windows boarded up or shattered. The front door barely hung on its hinges.
Trash littered the sidewalks.
The faint smell of rot lingered in the air. Malik sat in the passenger seat, his hoodie pulled tight around his face, eyes downcast. You sure you're ready for this? Ethan asked gently. Malik nodded, though his shoulders trembled. Ethan parked near the entrance and got out, waiting as Malik hesitated before slowly following. They climbed the worn stairwell, the walls peeling with old paint, graffiti scrawled across every surface. The hallways were eerily quiet, each step echoing down the empty corridor. When they reached apartment 3B, Malik froze. Ethan rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. We don't have to do this if you're not ready. But Malik's small hand reached for the door, pushing it open. The apartment was exactly as Malik had left it. The curtains hung limp, streaked with dust and grime. The furniture was sparse, an old couch, a broken coffee table, a tiny kitchenette with cracked counters. On the floor near the couch, a blanket lay carefully arranged, the outline of where Malik's mother had once slept still faintly visible. Ethan's throat tightened. Malik stepped inside, his steps cautious, reverent. I waited, Malik whispered, his voice shaking. All day. She didn't move. Ethan followed slowly, eyes scanning the room. This wasn't just a space. It was a graveyard of forgotten struggle, poverty, and quiet suffering. In the corner, near the couch, a stack of unopened mail, eviction notices, and medical bills cluttered the floor. Ethan knelt beside them, his eyes darkening. Jesus, he muttered. Medical bills.
Overdurent.
Disconnection warnings for water and electricity. The system had failed this family long before Malik's mother passed. Malik knelt beside him, pulling a faded scarf from beneath the blanket. She wore this every day, Malik whispered, clutching the fabric. Ethan's jaw tightened. She shouldn't have had to die like this. At that moment, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Ethan turned to see Officer Daniels standing in the doorway, flanked by Ms. Ramirez from CPS. Daniels glanced around, his expression grim. Figures this is what we'd find, he muttered. Ms. Ramirez stepped inside, clipboard in hand, eyes softening as she took in the scene. This explains a lot, she said quietly. Ethan stood.
We can tout document everything.
Officially. Daniels nodded, pulling out his phone to snap photos. Ms. Ramirez scribbled notes. Malik hovered near the couch, clutching the scarf, eyes wide but dry. He had no more tears left. After a few minutes, a pair of medical examiners arrived. They worked silently, carefully removing the blanket and confirming what everyone already knew. Malik's mother was gone. The process was clinical, detached. Ethan stood beside Malik the entire time, his hand resting lightly on the boy's shoulder, grounding him. She deserves better than this, Ethan muttered. We'll arrange proper transport, Ms. Ramirez assured him. And a funeral, if there are no other family members. There aren't, Malik whispered. Ethan spoke up.
Et elle handle the funeral.
Daniels raised an eyebrow. You don't have to do that. I know, Ethan replied simply. But I'm going to. Daniels studied him for a long moment but said nothing more. Hours later, as the sun set behind the decaying apartment building, Malik and Ethan stood outside. A black van pulled away, carrying the body of the only family Malik had ever known. Malik's grip on his scarf tightened. Ethan crouched beside him. I promised you wouldn't be alone, Ethan reminded him. That hasn't changed. Malik nodded, eyes distant but steady. They left the apartment behind, but the memory of that place, the quiet desperation, the unspoken grief, followed them like a shadow. The next day, Ethan arranged a small, private funeral. There were no elaborate speeches, no flashing cameras, no reporters. Just Malik, holding the faded photograph of him and his mother. Just Ethan, standing beside him. And for the first time, Malik whispered the words that had been trapped inside him for days. "She can rest now." Ethan didn't respond, but the quiet promise in his eyes spoke louder than words. The funeral was simple. No grand speeches, no press, no attention-seeking politicians offering hollow condolences. Just Ethan, Malik, and a small group from the city's social services quietly gathered around a modest gravesite at the edge of Detroit Memorial Park. The casket was plain but dignified, surrounded by a ring of white lilies and faded photographs Malik had insisted on bringing. It wasn't extravagant, but it was respectful, the kind of farewell Malik's mother had deserved. As the final shovelful of earth fell onto the grave, Malik stood silently beside Ethan, his scarf wrapped tightly around his neck, the photograph of his mother clutched to his chest. His face was unreadable, but his small hand curled around Ethan's jacket sleeve, grounding himself in the only stability he had left. Later that evening, back in the apartment, Ethan poured himself a drink as Malik sat quietly on the couch, tracing the edges of the photograph with his finger. For the first time in days, the apartment felt still. But peace was temporary. Ethan's phone buzzed on the counter. It was James. Ethan answered with a tired sigh. "What now?" James didn't waste time. "The media hasn't let go of this. It's worse." Ethan rubbed his temples.
Devine worse.
"There's a petition circulating online. Accusations that you used Malik for PR. That the whole thing was staged to distract from your development projects." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I haven't been near a camera." "Doesn't matter," James said.
The story is out of your control now.
Everyone's got an opinion. Ethan paced the kitchen, his frustration simmering. "And CPS? They're under pressure. People are questioning how they let a billionaire buy a child out of the system." Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. "I didn't buy anyone." "I know that," James replied calmly. "But optics matter. And right now, you look like the villain to half the country." Ethan exhaled, glancing toward Malik, who remained curled on the couch, unaware of the growing storm outside. "I'm not giving him up," Ethan said firmly. "I'm not suggesting you should," James replied. "But you need to be prepared for a legal fight. And soon." Ethan ended the call, his mind racing. He had expected obstacles. But the sheer venom from people who didn't know him, or Malik, was staggering. Social media was flooded with opinions. Ethan Blake thinks his money lets him do whatever he wants. Using a kid's tragedy for sympathy? Disgusting. CPS is broken, but so is letting billionaires rescue kids like pets. Ethan wanted to scream. It wasn't about PR. It wasn't about image. It was about a boy who had no one else. And yet, that truth was lost beneath headlines and hashtags. The next day, as Malik prepared for his first session with a CPS-appointed counselor, the apartment door buzzed. Ethan checked the monitor, expecting Ms. Ramirez or another official. It wasn't. It was Officer Daniels. Ethan opened the door cautiously. Daniels stood alone, his expression unreadable. "You got a minute?" the officer asked. Ethan stepped aside, gesturing him in. Malik peeked from the hallway, his eyes wary, before retreating from sight. Daniels noticed, but said nothing. The officer paced the living room briefly, then turned to Ethan. "I've been on the force in this city 15 years, Daniels began.
I've seen kids like Malik at 2 times.
They fall through the cracks. Sometimes they don't make it." Ethan crossed his arms, waiting. Daniels continued, "I don't like rich guys strolling into my district thinking they can fix everything with money." Ethan's jaw clenched. "I'm not trying to buy my way out of this." "I know," Daniels admitted.
That is what is messing with my head.
Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly, cautious. Daniels shoved his hands in his pockets. "I did some digging," he said. "Checked your history. You weren't always sitting in penthouses and driving 6-figure cars."
Ethan Schulder t'en said. What is your point?
"My point is," Daniels paused, choosing his words. "This city's full of people who talk. You acted. That means something." Ethan's guard eased a fraction.
You come all the way, ir tout el medet.
Daniels shook his head.
I come ir tout el you ve got en minau.
CPS is under pressure. Politicians want a scapegoat.
The media want blood.
And some folks in my department? They'd love to see you fall.
Ethan exhaled slowly.
What are you saying? I'm saying, watch your back, Daniels said. And watch his. He gestured toward the hallway where Malik had disappeared.
Ethan's eyes darkened with determination.
I already planned on it. Daniels nodded once, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, you did right by that kid. Ethan didn't respond, but the message lingered. As the officer left, Ethan returned to the living room. Malik stood in the doorway, the scarf still wrapped tight, his small face pale with uncertainty. You okay? Ethan asked.
Malik shrugged.
What did he want? To make sure I know how messy this is, Ethan replied honestly. Malik hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning in his mind for days. Are they gonna take me away? Ethan crossed the room, kneeling in front of him. I don't know how this ends, Malik, Ethan admitted. But I promise.
I'm not walking away. Malik's eyes searched, fragile op flickering beneath the fear. You promise? The boy whispered.
Ethan nodded. I promise. Outside, the city buzzed with noise, opinions, and anger. Inside it was just them, two people the world didn't understand, fighting to hold on to the only thing that mattered. Each other. 2 months later, winter still gripped Detroit, but for Malik, the world looked different. Gone were the long aimless days spent dragging his mother's bags down cold sidewalks. Gone were the nights sleeping on broken couches in a crumbling apartment, waiting for help that never came. Now he woke each morning in a quiet, safe apartment in the heart of the city, where the heat never failed, and the refrigerator was never empty. Where his canvas bags rested by his bed, untouched and respected, as promised. But not everything was simple. The custody battle had raged on. Court hearings, evaluations, background checks. The media continued to circle like vultures, dissecting Ethan Blake's every move. Protesters occasionally gathered outside the building, their signs accusing him of exploitation, manipulation, even kidnapping. Ethan ignored them all. His focus stayed on Malik. Today, Malik stood in front of the mirror in the bedroom, adjusting the scarf around his neck, the faded photograph of his mother tucked safely into his backpack. His new school uniform, neatly pressed, felt foreign on his small frame. Ethan appeared in the doorway, straightening his tie as he watched the boy. Nervous? Ethan asked. Malik shrugged, fiddling with the scarf. A little. Ethan approached, kneeling to Malik's level. First days are tough. But you've been through worse. Malik nodded. His eyes drifted toward the backpack, where the photograph peeked out from a side pocket. You ready? Ethan asked. Malik hesitated, then pulled the backpack onto his shoulders. Yeah. They took the elevator down together, walking out into the crisp morning air. The reporters were gone for now, replaced by city workers hanging holiday decorations along the street. At the school gates, Malik clutched his backpack straps tightly, eyes scanning the groups of kids. Some laughed, others whispered, casting curious glances his way. You don't have to go in alone, Ethan offered.
I can walk with you.
Malik shook his head. I can do it. Ethan smiled faintly, pride flickering in his eyes. All right. I'll be right here after school. Malik took a deep breath, then stepped toward the building. The scarf trailed behind him like a quiet shield of memory. Ethan watched him disappear into the crowd, the boy who, weeks ago, had stumbled down the street dragging his life behind him, now walking forward with his head held higher. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't over. But it was progress. Later that afternoon, after school, Malik returned, his expression guarded but calm. How was it? Ethan asked as they walked home.
Malik shrugged.
It was, okay. Some kids asked questions.
You tell them the truth.
Ethan asked. Some of it, Malik admitted. Not all. Ethan nodded, understanding. They passed a small park on their way home. Kids played on the swings. A man sat on a bench, clutching a tattered blanket, eyes sunken with exhaustion. Malik slowed, watching him. Ethan followed his gaze, recognizing the look in Malik's eyes, one he knew all too well. "That was me," Malik whispered. Ethan placed a hand on his shoulder. "It still is, in a way." Malik frowned. "What do you mean?" Ethan crouched beside him, his voice low.
"We carry where we come from, Malik."
"It doesn't disappear. But it doesn't have to control us either." Malik looked back at the man, then at his own hands. "Will it ever stop hurting?" he asked.
Ethan exhaled.
"The hurt stays. But so does the strength." Malik thought about that for a moment, then nodded. They continued walking, the city stretching ahead of them. A week later, the court date arrived, the final hearing. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was tense. Lawyers, CPS officials, reporters whispering from behind closed doors. But Ethan stood tall beside Malik, his hand resting gently on the boy's shoulder. The judge reviewed the files, scanning through reports, testimonies, evaluations. After what felt like hours, the judge looked up. "Mr. Blake," she addressed Ethan. "This situation has been unconventional."
The media attention.
The legal gray areas. Ethan's expression remained steady. "But one thing is clear," the judge continued. "Against every obstacle, you've provided this child with stability, safety, and respect." She turned her gaze to Malik.
"Malik, is this what you want?"
Malik glanced at Ethan, then at his canvas bags, safely resting on the floor beside him. "Yes," Malik answered firmly. "I want to stay." The judge nodded, scribbling notes. "Then, effective immediately, guardianship is granted to Mr. Blake." Ethan exhaled slowly, the weight lifting from his chest. Malik's hand slid into his, small but certain. Outside the courthouse, the cameras waited, their lenses hungry for sound bites and scandal. Ethan ignored them. Malik stayed close, his scarf trailing behind him, the photograph tucked safely away. As they approached the car, a reporter called out.
"Monsieur Blake, Annie comment? Do you feel like a hero today?"
Ethan paused, glancing at Malik, then back at the sea of flashing lights. "No," Ethan replied simply.
"I'm not a hero."
The reporters leaned in, expecting more. Ethan's eyes softened as he looked down at Malik. "I'm just someone who stopped." The words hung in the air, the noise of the city briefly fading. They drove away, leaving the cameras behind. Weeks passed. Malik settled into school. The protests quieted. The media moved on to the next controversy. But for Ethan and Malik, life remained steady. They laughed. They argued. They healed. But some scars remained. One cold evening, as they walked home from the park, Malik spotted another boy, younger than him, huddled beneath a storefront awning, clutching a plastic bag, eyes wide with fear. Malik stopped. Ethan followed his gaze. For a moment, neither spoke. Then softly, Malik asked, "Do we help him too?" Ethan crouched beside him, his voice gentle but firm.
"What do you think?"
Malik's fingers curled around his scarf. "We don't just walk by," he said quietly. Ethan smiled faintly.
"No, we don't."
They approached the boy together, no headlines, no cameras, just two people who knew the weight of the world and refused to let someone else carry it alone. The cycle wasn't broken. But it had cracked. And through that crack, hope slipped quietly into the night.